Now, Pavarotti was a good friend.
We're going to start our timeline in 2021 with a DRUG epidemic. Trafficking into Pullman and Moscow was destroying the towns. Here's an excerpt from Howard Bloom's book, and it says, the defense investigators' first stop was the Seattle DEA field office, and the overview they offered was by all accounts a tale of cutthroat international intrigue. It was the story of a pipeline that ran from China, where the fentanyl precursor chemicals were produced, to the sinister Sinaloa and Jalisco cartels in Mexico, which manufactured the DRUGS and then smuggled the too often lethal product to their distribution networks in northwestern urban hubs such as Seattle and Spokane. Next, with the eager help of a freelance army of small-time distributors, the DRUGS reached into the seemingly wholesome all-American counties and college towns like Moscow, Idaho. Here we can see the actual person who was bringing the DRUGS up from Mexico to our drug trafficking organization. He has now been sentenced. It's Gustavo Cantillarius Tapia of Burien, Washington. Here's the rest of the gang, all indicted on March 27, 2023, with 24, make it 28 federal arrests for trafficking narcotics into Washington, Idaho, all the way up to Alaska. This group is led by Jesse James Bailey. Here you see 14 members of that Aryan drug trafficking organization listed, including their leader, Jesse James Bailey. Here you see a concerned local citizen there in Moscow in a Facebook post mentioning there's been a huge DRUG problem here for years. Not pot, there's METH, H, FENT, pills, etc. We've had so many overdoses around here, deaths just don't make the news because they're expendable and they don't want it to hurt the university's revenues. So that's what the function of this group is, to impact that in the small towns. It's the Quad Cities DRUG Task Force. You can see there Washington and Idaho. Again, let's read out of Howard Bloom's book. That was the view from 1,000 feet, but Sheriff Brett Myers, head of the Quad Cities D Task Force, multi-jurisdictional team popped up in part by federal money, whose territory included the university towns of Moscow and Pullman, along with Lewis Clark State College in Lewiston, Idaho. They offered a ground-level account, and it was enough to give anyone whose child was heading off to college in the area the willies. The sheriff shared that his task force was working with college kids in the local schools whom they caught dealing MDMA and C, flipping them and using the students to go after the local dealers. And once the scared witless college kids had helped his team ID the foot soldiers, we go up the ladder to get the people tied to the cartels in the cities. The sheriff took a philosophical perspective on the possible danger the frat boy double agents might be heading into. It could be, he acknowledged equably, there are some very tough guys running this business. The risks, however, were no deterrents. We're game to do that every day of the week, he promised. Was some sort of similar intrigue going on in Moscow the night of the 4 students were unalived? The sheriff was not involved in the investigation and therefore can only speculate. But his was a local lawman's informed conjecture, and a resonating one. Could it have been a D-related case? I can't rule it out. It's not probable. From what I know, that answers a lot of questions. Then in September of 2021, a Kara Kernodle was arrested, and she was charged with possession of a controlled substance and possession of a controlled substance with intent to deliver. Now, this was no college student. This was a grown woman with a very long history of prior arrests and convictions, and not possessing a small amount, but possessing enough quantity to be considered intent to deliver. Now, this is someone that the D task force would absolutely enlist, but not in a normal fashion. This was much bigger. This would get them up the chain they were looking to get up to those major organizations. So they wouldn't do it on their own. They would have to bring in help on this one. Then later on, in August of 2022, a Miss Hatrock was arrested with similar charges of possession of a controlled substance, possession with intent to deliver, and possession of paraphernalia. Once again, this is no college student. This is a grown woman with a large quantity of DRUGS and a lengthy prior arrest and conviction record. Again, the D task force would need help on this one as well. Now, turning to them into informants wouldn't be difficult considering the charges they were facing. In Idaho, the statute for possession with intent is up to life imprisonment or fined not more than $25,000 or both. And with both of the young ladies being habitual offenders, meaning they had 2 prior felony convictions, the third conviction is a period of incarceration for an additional 5 years to life. With these types of charges and moving this far up the chain, the Quad Cities D task force would need to bring in the feds. Now, the FBI and the DEA is different. When they work with informants, there are protections put in place for those informants, and there's supposed to be protections for their family as well. Now, the only way you could verify if somebody is an FBI informant is FBI will open a separate federal indictment and seal it so that they can manage their cases. Now, could this be the sealed federal indictment for Kernodle? You can see the time frame when it was started in 2022 in February, and it is Kootenai County. And if it is her, then she was dispatched from federal protection on September the 26th. However, is this Hatrock sealed federal indictment? Again, you'll see the date, June 22nd, Kootenai County, and possession with intent to deliver. If it is, then hers was not dispatched at the time, and protections would still apply. Then on September 13, 2022, Kernodle takes a plea deal. Charges are reduced to a simple possession. Now, anybody in that world would then be assuming that Kernodle turned over on somebody. But who? And also, would her attorney at the time be aware of the deal that she had made with law enforcement? Coincidentally, on September 14th, TF and TR are arrested right there in Moscow, Idaho for DRUG trafficking, over 400 grams of METH, over 30 F pills. Major charges, major quantity distributors. You can see here in a newspaper article dated September 14th, 2022, that 2 people have been charged with felony DRUG trafficking for allegedly getting caught with a pound of METH in Moscow. Now, this gentleman, as you will find, is well known in the town as a white supremacist, and he has ties to the Aryan family that will later be taken down by law enforcement. Now, with too many priors to actually list, just going through a couple of pages of his infractions can tell the story on this guy's priors, I think. Now, strangely enough, in a town like Moscow, it may just be who you know. You can see in this arrest that he's being prosecuted by William Wolford Thompson, and his attorney is Catherine Mabbitt. But how far back does this relationship go? You can see this in 2007, where he was charged with injury to a child, controlled substance possession, and DRUG paraphernalia with intent to use. And you'll see that all three of those charges, two are dismissed on motion of the prosecutor, and the third one is dismissed by the court. Weird. Now, who was the prosecutor in that case? Oh, it was William Wolford Thompson. And his defense attorney wasn't Miss Mabbitt then, but you can see, oh, actually, this is a case back in, look at the bottom, 1999. Now, the other one arrested was his partner in crime, T.R. And you can see her history of offenses, and I stopped listing them at the last one, but they include trafficking, injury to a child, criminal trespass, petty theft many times over, and much, much, much more. Now, who's involved in these recent major cases? Judge is John Judge, active attorney William Wolford Thompson Jr. Is there any history there, you think? Yep, here's a 2007 charge that is being prosecuted by William Wolford Thompson, and her attorney of record is Catherine Mary Mabbitt. And again, this is 2007. Now, here is a charge from 2002, and it is being prosecuted by William Wolford Thompson. I imagine it's Junior. They go back a long way as well. Now, we're going to add to the timeline on October 21st, 2022. The same TF and TR are released from Latah County Jail. TF is released on a furlough, and TR is released on $75,000 bond. Here you can see the bond amount for TR listed at $75,000. And here is the news article for the warrant that's issued for TF after he is released by Judge Megan Marshall on a furlough that he didn't return from on October 21st, 2022. Now, they were released to go to their home on Cleveland Street there in Moscow, as you can see, only about 2 miles from the young adults' residence there on King Road in Moscow. Then adding to the timeline on November 11th, we have the Hat Rock court date comes due, and she takes a plea deal, and she has also had her charges reduced to a simple possession. Now, this is pretty big since she had a lengthy prior history, and it doesn't say anything about treatment. Her sentence was a simple 90 days, and penitentiary suspended, and she had to do that in the Kootenai County Public Safety Building. Now, people like this would know who set them up, but getting to them would be difficult since the mother and stepmother were protected by the FBI, and I'm sure the local Moscow Police Department was enlisted to keep an eye over their close family members.
Guys, Moscow PD. You over here to talk to me? Moscow PD. Hey, is that beer?
What's up?
Is that beer in your hand?
Yeah, I'm 21.
You got any idea in here?
I don't. I'll take it back in my car right after you leave.
Okay. Huh? No, they just took off.
Everything is now in motion for the major players in the 6 degrees of separation. Now the new timeline, following the atrocity. First, TF is arrested in Spokane on November 23rd. Here you see the Spokane County Superior Court case that was opened on him on November 23rd. He's then transferred back to Latah County on December 2nd. Now, was the leader of the drug task force, the FBI, and his old friend Bill Thompson all there waiting on his arrival? Here's an article from the New York Times where they show that law enforcement looked at a white supremacist. Here's the newspaper article dated December 2nd, 2022, where it shows that TF is transferred back to the Latah County Sheriff's Office from the lockup in Spokane, Washington. Now, in the next video, we will go into the timeline as it relates to the Coburger investigation, but I think it's important in this one to cover the alternate timeline because there was definitely dual investigations going on. As you can see, on December 9th, right after TF is brought back to Latah County, an arrest is made in Washington of 4 members of that Aryan Family DRUG trafficking organization. You can see here on or about December 9th, 2022 in Mason County within the Western District of Washington, Bryson Gill, Michael Slocum, Michael Warren, and Isaac Cervantes did knowingly and intentionally possess with intent to... That's all they had to put in the indictment. But just so you know, Bryson Gill, Michael Slocum, and Isaac Cervantes were the only 3 members of the 28 members taken down in the Aryan family that were from out of state. They were all 3 from Arizona, and in their possession was something very interesting. It was this arrest that netted the confiscation of the 2022 BMW X6 and the 2020 GMC Sierra. They were in their possession at the time. Only 5 days later, on December 14th in Pierce County, Jesse James Bailey, the leader of the organization, was arrested. That was part 1. What I want to provide you with now is what is undoubtedly the most extensive review of the investigation into Bryan Kohberger that's ever been done, and I believe the most accurate way to describe the events that happened in this investigation as you can possibly put together without access to the actual case files. So please sit back and put your thinking caps on because this is extensive. This is the investigation post-atrocity into Bryan Kohberger. Okay, the investigation into Bryan Kohberger. On November 13, 2022, we start with the atrocity on King Road. Everything goes into disarray after that, and the investigation begins. The first notable thing happens November 18th, 2022, and that's where Bryan Kohberger registers his car in Washington and is issued a front license plate. Now, this is out of the PCA on November 18th, 2022. According to Washington State Licensing, Coburger registered the 2015 white Elantra with Washington and later received Washington plate CFB-8708. Then on November 19th, Kara Kernodle is arrested in Kootenai County on additional DRUG possession charges. Here are her charges: 2 counts of possession of a controlled substance, both on November 19th, and then also a probation violation. Now you'll see it says FPV. The PV is probation violation. I'm going to let y'all figure out what the F in FPB is for yourself. Then on November 20th, DNA from the knife sheath is submitted to CODIS. And this is out of the court docs. Once law enforcement had single source DNA from the K-bar knife sheath, they conducted what is called a short tandem repeat, an STR analysis. STR DNA analysis involves looking at 20 regions within the human DNA and allows law enforcement to make a direct comparison between two STR DNA profiles. Law enforcement submitted the STR DNA profile obtained from the K-bar knife sheath to the Combined DNA Index System, that's CODIS, a database of STR DNA profiles from convicted offenders, arrestees, and crime scene evidence to identify the source of the DNA. No match was found. Then on November 23, 2022, TF is arrested in Spokane, Washington on his absconding warrant. And here is the Superior Court case info on November 23rd for TF. Then on November 25th, 2022, a BOLO goes out for a 2011 to 2013 Hyundai Elantra. Back to the PCA. So law enforcement officers provided video footage of suspect vehicle 1 to forensic examiners with the Federal Bureau of Investigation that regularly utilize surveillance footage to identify the year, make, and model of an unknown vehicle that is observed by one or more cameras during the commission of a crime, of a criminal offense. The forensic examiner has approximately 35 years of law enforcement experience with 12 years at the FBI. His specific training includes identifying unique characteristics of vehicles, and he uses a database that gives visual cues of vehicles across states to identify differences between vehicles. So he knows what he's doing. And then after reviewing the numerous observances of suspect vehicle 1, the forensic examiner believed that suspect vehicle 1 was a 2011 to 2013 Hyundai Elantra. Then, what is going on here? I don't know why it's doing that to me. It's freezing. Come on now. Then on November 25th, 2022, MPD asked area law enforcement agencies to be on the lookout for a white Hyundai Elantra in the area. Why my computer's doing that? Okay, then on November 29th, 2022, WSU officer compiles all the Elantras on campus, but Coburger's has a front license plate. And this is again out of the PCA. On November 25th, 2022, MPD asked area law enforcement agencies to be on the lookout for white Hyundai Elantras in the area. On November 29th, 2022, at approximately 12:28, Washington State University police officer Daniel Tiengo queried the white Elantras registered at WSU. As a result of that query, he located a 2015 white Elantra with a Pennsylvania license plate LFZ 8649. This vehicle was registered to Bryan Kohberger, hereafter Coburger, residing at the 1630 Northeast Valley Road, apartment 201, Pullman, Washington. 1630 Northeast Valley Road is approximately 3/4 of a mile from the intersection of Stadium Way and Cougar Way. And that was the last camera location that picked up the white Elantra. I might add, picked it up in Washington. And because this vehicle was a 2015 and it didn't match the 11 to 13 model years that the officers were looking for, this one was obviously put in the database with all the other Elantras that they were putting together and never submitted to Officer Payne. And we learned that by watching Officer Payne on the stand in court.
There was a part of the affidavit where you talked about WSU officers identifying white Elantras.
Yes, ma'am.
And there was a part of the affidavit where you talked about 2011 to 2013 Elantras, and then it expanded to 2016 to include the year 2016 Elantras.
Yes, ma'am.
What I want to know first is what you relied on to expand that search from 2013 to include 14, 15, and 16.
That information was provided to FBI Special Agent Einel, who's a vehicle identification specialist. He used snapshots from the previously mentioned surveillance videos, and that was his determination on the types of vehicles we should be looking for, rather the year range we should look for. It would be in his report, we'd be more specific, but that was what I based the affidavit on, that portion of it.
I understand as far as when we get to 2013, but when we go beyond that, what did you rely on to get beyond that?
It would have been his input as an expert in vehicle identification. That's what.
Okay, part of your affidavit talks about WSU officers finding white Elantras. And I believe there was an officer that you had some communication with. Do you recall the date you had that communication?
I do not recall the date.
Did you have some messaging system exchange with this officer to talk about that?
Yes, ma'am.
Is that the only means of communication you had with this officer?
No, ma'am. I believe I spoke to him on the telephone as well.
When you spoke to him on the telephone, how did that relate to the date of the messaging?
It would have likely been, if memory serves, it would likely been that same day.
Okay. Does December 20th, 2022 sound familiar to you?
Yes, ma'am.
And so this conversation with this officer from Washington, it related backwards to when he noticed an Elantra, is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
But when he noticed it, you didn't know about that yet, is that also correct?
That is correct.
Okay, so you don't know about him or talk to him until December 20th, 2022, correct?
That's correct.
Then on November 29, 2022, Idaho State Police contracts with Othram Labs to begin an investigative genetic genealogy search. Because the identity of the person from which the crime scene samples came is often unknown, law enforcement uses a false name John Doe, for example, and submits it to GED Match. By the way, this is straight out of the court documents on the IGG. Then, when their John Doe matches someone in the database, they use genealogical data to determine a common ancestor who might be a great-great-grandfather or grandmother. They then triangulate other data such as birth, voting, and military records to build out the pedigrees from that common ancestor, identifying all of the potential individuals who may be suspects. As we each have about 1,000 fourth cousins and fifth cousins, depending on the degree of relation, you can see right here, this process can be quite time-consuming. The methodology is known by different names. In the forensic genetics research community, it's referred to as long-range familial searches. Law enforcement sometimes refers to this as forensic genetic genealogy. So the key in that is this process can be quite time-consuming. This is not something that they would have been able to achieve in a matter of about 3 weeks. So the genetic genealogy search never concluded during the time frame when they arrested Bryan Kohberger. And if they try to say it did, they worked in reverse from his name, and that is why they're hiding the IGG, all of the data that showed how they put it together from the court. Because once Ann Taylor is able to delegitify the IGG, then it all falls back to the one true thing that this case is about, and that is the confidential informant's reliability. Then on December 2nd, 2022, TF is arrested in Spokane. Well, he's not arrested. He's actually transferred back to Latah County Jail. He was arrested on November 23rd. So this is where the investigation really heats up because TF is now back in Latah. And you can see here's his newspaper article on his arrest and his transfer back to the Latah County Jail. Then on December 6, 2022, there is a search warrant filed with DoorDash. Here is the warrant history. You can see it was served on December 6, 2022 by email by Lawrence Mowry. Detective Mowry filed the warrant. Then on December 7th, 2022, the warrant was returned from DoorDash. Got it back fast with some information in there. You can see here is the warrant return on December 7th. And then we have to take a speculative look at what this tells us. You can see this is the original alibi statement from Ann Taylor for Bryan Kohberger, and we're going to focus in on this sentence. It is anticipated this evidence may be offered by way of cross-examination of a witness produced by the state, as well as calling expert witnesses. So Ann Taylor is saying that the state has a witness that will verify Kohberger's alibi. And we believe we know who that witness is. And it is the DoorDash driver, which is none other than speculation Emma Bailey. And you can see down here it says, out of Howard Bloom's book in a quote, he might even have visited Bailey from time to time at her home in Moscow, which, as it happened, was tucked into the very end of a cul-de-sac a minute or so drive away from the unaliving house, which would put it very much within the same incriminating cell tower radius as the scene of the crime on King Road. Then on December 8th, the Amazon warrant is returned to law enforcement. That was filed on November 26th. Again, it was a blanket search warrant for people who had purchased K-Bar knives off of Amazon. Now they have a list of names to go by. And you can see here is the warrant return on December 8th for the Amazon list that was filed for on November 26th. Then on December 14th, Kernodle is arraigned in Kootenai County on her new charges. Once again, here is her new charges. This is a clearer picture of them. 2 counts of possession of a controlled substance. You can see down there on December 14th, that's her bond hearing. And you've got a probation violation, FE, FPV. What does that F stand for, y'all? Figure it out. Okay, search warrant issued for Bryan Kohberger's apartment on December 14th. The next big thing in the investigation. Let's take a look at the evidence for that. Now we've got on December 15th, obviously Bryan Kohberger is shot by law enforcement during the search and unalived. Then also on December 15th, we go into the 6 degrees of separation. Judge Megan Marshall seals the search warrant for Amazon. And you can see the appropriate time the property can be released or disposed of upon authorization of the jurisdictional prosecuting attorney. It's further ordered that said property or any part thereof may be delivered to a person or laboratory or laboratories for the purpose of conducting or obtaining any tests, analysis, or identification of said property which is deemed necessary by the custodial law enforcement agency or jurisdictional prosecuting attorney without further order of this court, dated 12/15/22 at 12:04 p.m., Megan Marshall. That's her sealing the Amazon warrant. and nobody has ever been able to get information on the Kopeka alive in Pullman. Oh, now we got December 15th, 2022. Also, busy day for Judge Megan Marshall. She transfers TF from her jurisdiction over to Judge John Judge. And you can see this is the transfer order. You can see on December 15th, notice of judge assignment change. It changes from Megan Marshall down to John Judge and schedules a December 19th arraignment for TF. Now, remember, TF was just transferred back on December 2nd. So now he's going for his court hearing within 2 weeks. And that included an absconding in between for a month and a half. So this is the fastest court date ever set for a individual like this, I think, in judicial history. Then on December 19th, you'll see TF takes the plea deal on his charges. I've titled this plea deal in the past the absolute deal of the century, because it is. You'll see the 6 degrees of separation beginning to form in here, because who was the parties involved with TF's plea deal? Well, the judge that had to approve the deal is obviously John Judge. The prosecutor that would have had to approve it is William Wolford Thompson Jr. And obviously the coroner in the atrocity is his public defender, Catherine Mary Mabbitt. Now, Catherine Mabbitt has been his public defender for years and defended him many times in front of William Wolford Thompson Jr. Now, he knows TF very well. He's been prosecuting him for 25 years now on so many charges you couldn't possibly keep up with, and I'll show you that in a second. Now, here is his charges, and you can see he's got DRUG trafficking and METH, and it's over 400 grams, and you can see below the penalty in Idaho. If you have over 400 grams or more, such person shall be sentenced to a mandatory minimum fixed term of imprisonment of 10 years. Fine not less than $25,000, not less. So the mandatory sentence handed down by the legislature says TF, even on a first-time offense, would have to receive 10 years and $25,000 in fines. No minimum, nothing less. But then he's also got, his possession of a controlled substance and his paraphernalia charge to deal with as well. But with prior history, he is a very good candidate for life in prison, but minimum 10 years on conviction. Now, his history goes back. You can see this starts in 23, and all these charges and infractions are 2022, 2021, 2020, and then here's 2017, 16, 14, 2010, 2007, 2006, and then here's more 2006, 2004, 2003, 2001, 2000, 99. He's never made it a whole year, it looks like, hardly. 99, 99, 99. He did a lot then. 98, did some then. 97, a couple. 3, 4, 5. Let's see. All the way back to 1995. Those were all of his priors. So I would think he would be the perfect candidate to receive some long-term prison time. But you'll see on December 20th, 2022, Judge John Judge accepts TF's plea deal. You can see that he pled not guilty on all 3 charges. And look at the bottom down here. The trafficking charge was dismissed on motion of prosecutor. So William Wolford Thompson Jr. decided not to prosecute on that charge. The paraphernalia he decided not to prosecute on. They had him plead guilty to a simple possession, and he received probation. Now you'll see that his disposition of these charges and his probation wasn't to start until March 1st, 2023. Now typically when you go in for a plea deal and the prosecutor accepts the deal, the defendant accepts the deal, and the judge accepts the deal, they've already arranged for the sentencing, so they go ahead and impose sentencing on that day. But a lot of these cases, we're noticing that the dispositions are put out for the sentencing for extended periods of time. So why is that? Let me show you. Okay, this is an outline for a confidential informant. And I'll direct your attention down here to the bottom so that you can see. It is not uncommon for informants to work off a degree of a crime or a part of the sentence at a time and then agree to do more cooperation for additional reductions of charge or sentence. Sometimes a plea is entered into before the court after the first successful cooperation, and then the sentencing date is adjourned. That means extended while you work off more assistance. So that's why they don't go ahead and sentence these people that are confidential informants on the dates that their court is agreeing upon their plea deals. They're extending it out and adjourning that sentence so that they can get more assistance from them. And you can see here's his ultimate sentence, started on March 1st. It was 30 days in the Latah County Jail, penitentiary suspended. He didn't get $25,000 in fines. He got $285. And, and then he was also sentenced to a lie detector test, which is interesting. Now, during that same time that TF got this super deal, on December 20th, somehow Bryan Kohberger's name comes up in the investigation, just out of nowhere. It's just plucked in there. Very strange. Now, here are those Steve G texts that Howard Bloom verified in the interview were accurate. They were real. And you can see it says the Peterson true crime guy helped connect us with a grand jury member. And we've talked with 2 of the grand jury members, and that helped calm nerves a lot. What did he learn from those grand jury members? What have you heard about the protected witness? He went down because of the informant. He didn't plan on getting caught. I have to keep the witness under wraps. The FBI warned me they don't play games with protected informants, and they could be monitoring everything I say. We've noticed some quite odd communications and behaviors. So the grand jury said that he was taken down because of a confidential informant. That's interesting. Oh, then we've got this that pops up over and over in the case files, and this is 16G2. And it's informant's disclosure must not be required of an informant's identity unless the informant is to be produced as a witness at a hearing or trial, subject to any protective order under subsection 1 of this rule or a disclosure order under subsection B6 of this rule. So they keep trying to get the information on the confidential informant, but as you can see, they won't give them that information because they're not planning on having them testify as a witness. But if push comes to shove, Prosecutor Bill Thompson has already said he will get together a list of witnesses that can testify in this trial. Well, as soon as he produces one of those informants as a witness, they go from being a confidential informant to a cooperating witness, which then would be subject to disclosure. But until they do that, you can see there's protective orders. At any time, the court may, for good cause, deny, restrict, or defer discovery or inspection or grant appropriate other relief. The court may permit a party to show good cause by a written statement that the court will inspect ex parte. If relief is granted, the court must preserve and seal the entire text of the party's statements. So, defense, you cannot look at what the confidential informant said, and you cannot have the information on them unless we turn them into a cooperating witness. And that's why Ann Taylor, in all of her case citings, as you see here, she cites finding informants' reliability. Because here's what Ann Taylor knows. She knows that the IGG did not complete. If she can prove that in court, then that will force the prosecution to take their confidential informant that gave Coburger's name and turn them into a cooperating witness. Once he turns them into a cooperating witness, then Ann Taylor will have disclosure on them. Then Ann Taylor can get them disqualified due to informant's reliability, which will then start fruit of the poisonous tree, and everything that took place after that informant gave Coburger's name will be all thrown out due to that reason. Now you know. Then we've got Payne talks to Tiengo. And how do we know that this is where this really started? Well, let's take a listen.
Did you have some messaging system exchange with this officer to talk about that?
Yes, ma'am.
Is that the only means of communication you've had with this officer?
No, ma'am. I believe I spoke to him on the telephone as well.
When you spoke to him on the telephone, how did that relate to the date of the messaging?
It would have likely been, if memory served, it would likely been that same day.
Okay. Does December 20th, 2022 sound familiar to you?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, again, between the December 20th, 2022 and the 23rd, all of these things then take place, and I believe they took place in this order. First, we've got Payne talks to Tiengo now that he has Coburger's name. And once again, we see the Washington State University police officer Daniel Tiengo as he queried all those Elantras and found Coburger's Elantra that didn't match anything. Then Payne looks at Bryan Kohberger's driver's license. Yep, a review of Coburger's Washington State driver's license information and photograph. This license indicates Coburger's a white male with a height of 6 feet, weighs 185 pounds. Additionally, the photograph of Coburger shows that he has bushy eyebrows. Along with everybody else in the world that has eyebrows, we're all bushy. Coburger's physical description is consistent with the description of the male Mortensen saw inside the King Road residence on November 13th. How would you know? Because she didn't say what his hair color was, his style, what ethnicity he was, nothing. Just that he had eyebrows. It's approximately 3/4 of a mile from the intersection of Stadium and Cougar Way to his residence. That was the last camera location that picked up the white Elantra. No, that was the last camera location that picked up Coburger's white Elantra, not suspect vehicle 1. Then we'll see Payne reviews traffic stops so he could check out Coburger's tags at the time. Now, on October 14, 2022, Coburger was detained as part of a traffic stop by a WSU police officer. Upon review of that body cam and report of the stop, Coburger was the sole occupant and was driving that white 2015 Hyundai Elantra with Pennsylvania plate LFZ 8649. But on November 18, 2022, according to Washington State licensing, Coburger registered that 2015 Elantra with Washington and later received Washington plate CFB 8708. Prior to this time, the 2015 Elantra was registered in Pennsylvania, which does not require a front license plate to be displayed. Oh, well, then that means it had to be Coburger then, right? And then Payne has FBI review camera footage of Elantra on WSU campus and extend the model year to 2011 to 2016 conveniently. And let's take a look at that. You can see investigators, up until this point, remember, they had already identified suspect vehicle 1 as the 2011 to 2013, and that was from camera footage of the vehicle driving around the King Road residence. But now, here, over a month and a week later, investigators are given access to a video footage on the Washington State University campus located in Pullman. A review of that video indicated that approximately 2:44 a.m. on November 13th, a white sedan, which was consistent with the description of the white Elantra known as suspect vehicle 1, only consistent in the manner that it was a white Elantra, was observed on WSU surveillance cameras. A white sedan, which is consistent with the description of the white Elantra known as Suspect Vehicle 1, once again meaning it was just a white Elantra, it was observed traveling southeast on Nevada Street in Pullman, Washington towards SR 270, and where SR 270 connects to Pullman, Washington to Moscow. Now, this camera footage from Pullman, Washington was provided to that same FBI forensic examiner, same one that identified the other one as a 2011 to 2013. The forensic examiner identified the vehicle observed in Pullman, Washington as being a 14 to 16. So what does that tell us? It tells us that FBI examiner is pretty good. I mean, he identified Coburger's actual car that is a 2015, and we know that, as a 14 to 16. So he's good at identifying the year models of these vehicles. So we would have to assume he was probably pretty good when he identified the Suspect Vehicle 1 in the King Road neighborhood as a 2011 to 2013. But it was because of this second vehicle description that we heard Payne testify to on the stand that that's when it happened, that they extended the year model from 11 to 16. So folks, see, this is why I can't get on board with Kohberger's guilty, because this is absolute, this is just lying right here. They extended the truth out and they lied to put this in the PCA and extend the year models out to fit Kohberger's car. It's a blatant lie. I mean, there's no other way to say it. Now, upon further review, they indicated it could also be a 2011 to 2016 Hyundai Elantra. As a result, investigators have been reviewing information on persons in possession of that 11 to 16 white Hyundai Elantra. So this right here, this statement earlier in the PCA, this statement is a lie, ladies and gentlemen. Now we go to December 20 to 23rd, and Payne reviews traffic stops for Kohberger's phone number, right? He goes in and he reviews any contacts that Kohberger's had with police officers, and he finds this. As further investigation, including a review of Latah County Sheriff's Deputy Corporal Duke's body cam and report, showed that on October 21st, 2022, Coburger was detained as part of a traffic stop. And you can see at that time, his Pennsylvania plate was LFZ 8649. It was set to expire November 30th. So, you know what? He did the responsible thing and went and re-registered his car in Washington before his tags expired. But during the stop, Coburger provided his phone number of 509-592-8458, hereafter the 8458 phone. So this is where he obtains his phone number. Then Payne compares Kohberger's phone number to the FBI unmasking, again between the 20th and the 23rd. So this should tell Payne if Kohberger is the suspect. He compares his phone to the FBI. They unmasked all of the phones in the area of the King Road residence, and that is a big deal when they unmask everything. That usually takes a FISA warrant, but apparently they were able to do it without one. And it says, as part of this investigation, law enforcement obtained search warrants. They did, I doubt it, to determine cellular devices that utilize cellular towers in close proximity to the King Road residence on November 13, 2022, between 3 and 5 a.m. After determining that Kohberger was associated to the Elantra and the 8458 phone, investigators reviewed these search warrants. So they took his phone and they compared them to all the phones in the area. And look what it says. It says, maybe I didn't put in there what it says. Oh, well, right here, I'm sorry. A query of the 8458 phone and these returns did not show the 8458 phone number utilizing cellular tower resources in close proximity to the King Road residence between 3 and 5. So he verified his phone against it, and it did not work. Okay, then Payne queries the database and learns that Coburger is in Pennsylvania. Investigators believe that Coburger is still driving the Elantra. His vehicle was captured on December 13th by a license plate reader in Loma, Colorado. And Coburger's Elantra was queried on December 15th in Hancock County, Indiana. On December 16th, surveillance video shows Coburger in Albrightsville, Pennsylvania, and he was the sole occupant of the vehicle as a white male whose description is consistent with Coburger. Coburger has family in Albrightsville, Pennsylvania. We learned that through a TLO search and locate database query. So now they realize he's in Pennsylvania. Now, on December 23rd, 2022, let's see, did I miss something here? Okay, no, okay. Nope, there it is. This is where Payne files for the search warrant on December 23rd. So he applied for and was granted a search warrant for historical phone records between the 12th and the 14th for the 8458 phone. And then on December 23rd, pursuant to the search warrant, he received the records. And these records included historical cell site location information for the 8458 phone. After receiving this information, he consulted with FBI special agent that's certified as a member of the cellular analysis team. Members of the cast are certified with the FBI to provide expert testimony in the field of historical CSLI. Now, all this stuff he's saying right here, we know now is a lie. Because when he filed for the search warrant on December 23rd, I'm not going to show the court hearing, but they pressed them on the fact that there was not enough time for the FBI agent to use the CSLI data to actually produce his whereabouts with it. Before they filed for the second search warrant, there wasn't enough time. So when he filed for the search warrant, he got the information back. It's my perspective that they actually looked at his call and text history on his phone, found something that gave them the ability to get the second search warrant. So December 23rd, Payne obtained search warrants for 6 months prior to the atrocity. Directly after, on the 23rd, he had got the 24 and 48 hours phone records. And there it is again. Now on December 24th through the 29th, Payne obtains history from WSU website on Coburger. This is where he goes to the website at WSU, figures out Coburger's a PhD student in criminology, and he goes through and he takes all the information he can find about Coburger, and they search through and find the information about the Reddit survey that was assigned to him by school and put all that in the PCA just to try to make it look even better for a search warrant, for an arrest warrant. And then on December 29th, Payne attains an arrest and search warrant for Coburger's home in Pennsylvania. And that's the end of the Coburger investigation. But the thing that we have to keep in mind when we look at this timeline, we can see what happened. We know where they got Coburger's name. And the reason, I've said this in previous videos, I believe that Ann Taylor went into this with a different perspective when she took Coburger as a client. Somewhere along the way, she realized that Coburger was not guilty for this. And she realized the reason he wasn't guilty is the person who identified Coburger as a guilty party is the person who is responsible for this crime. And he's the person who planted the knife sheath that implicated Coburger. So she realizes that, and now her best goal is to discredit the IGG because it was never completed, then get access to a confidential informant once the prosecution turns them into a cooperating witness, get them disqualified due to reliability of the informant, which then will start fruit of the poisonous tree and eliminate any evidence after that because there really isn't any evidence against Coburger. And that is the case, y'all. Yes. That is really what happened, when it happened in the investigation, and that is what Bryan Kohberger and his defense team is up against. Folks, please, if you like the information I put out in this video, let's help get this one out there so that more people can see it. Please share it as much as you can, like and subscribe, and as always, post your comments and your thoughts, criticisms, point out anything I may have got wrong, and until next time, because I will not stop. I will keep going as many videos as I can possibly do until the time of this trial to keep this in people's minds. Pavarotti is out.